Welcome everybody. So this is our very first e-learning industry insight series for 2019 for the master program in education is online teaching and learning program. This program is in the process doing the program elevation from a concentration to be a full program and will be the MS in e-learning. And so my name is Dr. Roger Wen. I'm the program director, and we also have Ailey. She's going to join us in a few minutes. She's our advisor, program manager, and I'm also the senior director for the Office of the Online Campus. And just in case you need the contact information, it's on the slide, okay? So right now it's 12:04, so I want to go ahead and introduce our guest speaker. And because I noticed from the preview, she has a lot of the information in her slides, so I'm going to go very brief. Our very first keynote speaker is Ashley. I met Ashley from the search, one of the internet cafe things online, right? Online meeting. And she is very knowledgeable and being in the industry for a long time and experience with the K-12 teacher, instructional designer, and then doing some of the innovative stuff. I think she's going to mention that. And so I thought she would be a great person, and she's having her company right now. So I think she will be a great a person to start our e-learning insights series, because she can give everybody, our students, alum, prospective student, about the landscape of this industry. And so we have about 50 people, 56 people RSVP to this webinar. Some of them want us to record. About 1/3 are prospective student, another 1/3 is current student, and then another 1/3 is about our alum. And we also have a few that is currently our staff members or instructors, okay? So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my slide. And then I'm going to turn over to Ashley, and then she will be sharing her slide and then start taking, and start sharing her insight with everybody, okay? And if you have any question at all, we will be monitoring the chat. So you can actually just put your question in the chat, and we'll try to monitor at the end. We can ask Ashley questions, okay?
Okay. Great. Thank you so much. And it's great to be here. I really appreciate everyone sharing some of their day with us. And I want to do a special thank you to Dr. Wen for the invitation. He's incredible in how thoughtful and strategic he is in thinking about how to best support students and about program development. But most of all, this is a really exciting time in all of your lives, whether you're, just starting your master's program or you're in the field and seeking opportunities. You're embarking on a new journey and taking important steps. And I think the really good news is that, whether you want to be a teacher or a trainer or instructional designer or technologist, whatever that might be, there are just more and more opportunities available. And so today, we're going to explore a couple of these and shed light on what's happening in the industry and provide you with some practical insights so that you can make decisions to succeed as you're moving forward. So on our agenda today, we're going to talk about digitization a little bit, and opportunities across the industry, areas of specialization, what skills are in demand, building your brand, interview essentials, and just succeeding in general throughout your career. So if you have any questions along the way, I invite you to please chat them, and Dr. Wen, please feel free to jump in at any moment to help acknowledge those questions so we can get them answered. And then we'll also have a Q&A period at the end where we'd love to hear about, what your specific questions or thoughts are on the industry and so forth. Great. So as Dr. Wen mentioned, my name is Ashley, and I am the founder of Teamed, and this is a staffing agency / talent marketplace specifically for the digital learning industry. And so we have been staffing for higher education entities, ed tech startups, publishers, and corporate learning and development departments. And within this time frame, it's been incredibly interesting. I've seen lots of insights across the fields in terms of what jobs are in demand, what skills are in demand, how things are evolving, cultures, how things are shifting. So I'm excited to share those with you. And then in terms of where I've been, it's probably a lot like many of you. I started out as a classroom teacher. I was a fourth grade teacher. I moved into instructional design. And then I really loved the idea of digital learning and rethinking education and accessibility and data. And so I moved into that area and started out actually as a corporate ID. And so, my first education related online job was with an online MBA program. And I don't often tell people this, but I applied 3 times to that specific job and finally got an interview. And so it's not always an easy road, but if you're thoughtful about your purpose and your passion, you'll get to where you're headed and get to where you want to be. And so once I got into online education, I was lucky to have a lot of different access to opportunity. Eventually, I was leading the entire university's learning design and technology department. So with over 50,000 students, over 1,200 online courses, founded an innovative design studio where we created story-driven, high production value courses. And so I hope that gives you a little bit of context. There's just so much, great room to move within in this industry, and I'm really excited for all of you, and look forward to getting to know you and also helping in your path as teamed and I can. Okay. So the first thing that I wanted to touch on is the idea of digitization. And I really wanted to couch and color our conversation in this topic because, as you know, digitization as a whole, it's changing our world and it's changing learning. And most importantly, it's going to have an impact on your careers. And so by seeing this larger trend, you're going to be better prepared to make smart choices about your career, areas you'd like to specialize in, and it'll prepare you both mentally and skill-wise to be adaptive. And I think that the mental adaptation part is incredibly important. There's so many changes coming up, and we're all going to need to continue to grow and pivot and learn. And there's a lot of people that I've seen struggle within that specific area. So one thing, let's see. Okay, so there's, as you know, there's digitization is changing how we live, how we work, how we learn. So we're shopping differently, we're connecting differently, we're consuming differently, and we're making decisions differently. And this is largely due to digitization. But beyond our life, it also changes how we work. And this evolution, as you know, it's opening up new doors. So jobs that didn't exist before, and boundaries between industries and fields, those are starting to diminish. So for example, in education over the past few years, I've had more contact and collaboration with marketers and web developers and award-winning video producers and talented writers and so many more. And so there's this interesting collapse of fields and people that you'll be working with. And it's also influencing how we work. So 80% of the jobs that Team places, and we place contractors and employee positions, 80% are in remote positions. And so there's this great equalizer happening of doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter where you came from, you can contribute in unique ways. The other thing that we can't fail to talk about is what's happening in learning. So we're at this very unique point in history where we're able to rethink learning, and we're all a part of it. So digitization, it's changing how learning can occur, how we guide students, and even the fundamentals of what students should be learning. And I think it's important to note that this is just the tip of the iceberg. As you know, there's all this frontier technology. And so what that means is that there's frontier technology is like systems like blockchain, virtual reality, automation, artificial intelligence. And I'm starting to see education entities aggressively exploring these areas and leveraging them for learner benefit. So to provide a little bit more context on this, and this is, this is food for thought for you. I want you to keep this in mind as we talk about careers and pathways. Only 24% of digitization has occurred throughout major industries. And so business is at 17%, healthcare is at 24%, retail is at 46%. So we have a really long ways to go. And this is from a McKinsey Insights article. And so it's called 25 Years of Digitization. And so I think that we all need to think about, well, where is learning at on this curve? We're probably in the 15 to 25% range. And so with that, our work is going to change. The way that we think about learning and design and operationalizing it is going to be impacted. And so it's helpful to think about what this might look like over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then one other important note on this is that you can also think of digitization as the backbone for frontier technologies. And what that means is that digitization is what those frontier technologies have to build on. And so once industries become digitized, that's when the automation, artificial learning, the AI and the machine learning really take impact. And so the further we go along, the faster the change cycle is going to become. Okay, so to switch gears a little bit, but again, to be keeping digitization in the back of our minds, there's a number of industries that we can all work in. And so there's education related work. This is K-12, so higher ed tech companies, publishers. And then there's also training and corporate learning and development. So with private organizations, with nonprofit, with government and so forth. And oftentimes I meet people who are passionate about one or the other. They're either focused on education or they're focused on training and learning and development. And there's some that do a little bit of both. So I think it's important to consider what type of environment you really enjoy and can thrive in. And so some good questions to consider are, are you drawn to education or are you drawn to corporate learning and development? Because there's a slightly different focus in how you work, and both of those, even though there's a ton of overlap. And then another question is, do you want a fast-paced environment or do you want something a little bit more predictable? And there's significant, benefits to both. There's a lot of great, fast-moving startup-like organizations and opportunities where you wear a lot of different hats, where you can grow incredibly quickly over a short period of time. But the major risk factor there is burnout and just overwork and poor work-life balance. And then there's other types of universities that and organizations that tend to be a little bit more bureaucratic. And so things move a little bit slower. You generally have to stay in your lane a little bit more than you would at startups where you're able to engage in all different types of decision making. And so this is at the other end of the spectrum of, it's a little bit slower. Are you making the impact that you want? And so just, keeping some of these things in mind while you're considering which path you want to take, I think is helpful. Another big one to consider are what are the risk factors associated with the sector or company you'd like to join. And so some of those risk factors, for example, like publishers, they have been going through restructurings and layoffs for the past, gosh, I don't know, 6-7 years. And so I'm constantly coming across professionals in the hundreds that have been laid off due to restructurings. And so there's different types of organizations. If you're considering them, you might want to look at their history of what's happening in terms of stability of position and propensity to move up the chain. And I think that, and really your job the job that you land next is gonna make a difference in where you go. So as you're applying for positions, as you're looking out into the world and saying, where do I want to be? As a staffing professional, when I see someone has worked at XYZ, I usually have a pretty good idea of that company's culture and their values and the skills required for that person. And so I'm pretty easily able to assess, are they a good fit for my client simply based on the last position that they held. So you want to be thoughtful and careful about the opportunities that you engage in. Okay, so moving on from there, there is more and more specialization happening. When I first started, I started out as from moving from a teacher to an instructional designer. And I think the really interesting thing that's happening is everything is becoming higher production value, a bit more complex, more technologically laden. And so you need all of these different types of professionals. And so what this means for you is that with your baseline set of skills, you can continue to grow and to move in directions that are of interest to you. There's opportunities in teaching, and with teaching, I see a lot of people moving into professional development and training. And then on the learning design side, I've seen instructional design segment into learning design and instructional technology. And so learning designers are more and more focused on the pedagogy, creating those sound experiences, and then also content creation. So if you're passionate about creating that learning experience and that journey, thinking about your writing skills and thinking about staying up on brain-based learning is incredibly important. I am seeing a lot of professional writers move into this space. They're getting caught up in instructional design methodology and teaching and learning best practices, and they are exceptional learning designers because they're excellent writers. They know how to grab someone's attention, how to motivate them, how to break down skills, and so that's an area to think about in terms of learning design. If you're headed that way, think about your content creation skills. So the other one is tech and multimedia design. Actually, let me refresh my page because I had updated this a little bit. It was learning technology. And I separated this out a little bit. So as you know, technology is incredibly important. This one is becoming a little bit more of people who really love building, understand learning theory and design. They're building courses, they're integrating tools, they're building multimedia assets. They're also learning a little bit of web development and coding. And then another area that you could move into is design. And this one is more about like graphic design, visual design, asset creation, UI, UX design. So if you're creative and you're leaning in that direction, what I look for when I am looking for a designer to join an education or a corporate learning company is I look for someone who really understands learning, because marketing design is very, very different from the goals of what it is that we need to accomplish. Other areas are project and product management. There is such a need out there right now for exceptional project managers. And so if you're organized and you love making sure all of the details are attended to, and you can do Excel spreadsheets like no one else, this might be something to look at. There's a lot of demand. The pay tends to be a little bit better. And there's also a lot of demand in product management, just because so many pieces of learning are becoming products, both in education and in training and development. And so those people who can think about user testing and iteration and work with developers and engineers to create pathways of learning, that's just an exciting area that is continuing to grow. The last one is data and analysis. And so I'm seeing more and more organizations look for people who can conduct exhaustive research and pull data. So how are students learning? How are they engaging? What are risk factors? When should we be pushing nudges to help them engage? And so people who have that strong statistical and number sense, this is another great area to think about and perhaps move into. And I'm sorry, Dr. Chen, I don't have the chat menu up, so I'm not sure if there's any questions or thoughts at the moment.
So far, we don't have any questions.
Okay.
We're doing great.
Okay, great. All right, so like I had mentioned before, there are a few areas that are incredibly in demand. When we're staffing, I'd say the number one need is they want people who are great communicators and who are problem solvers. And I think that we're all seeing this, in education and learning. Knowledge is everywhere. We all have a smartphone. We can look up anything. And so students need to learn things in a different way, but we also need to be different as a workforce. And so employers want people who can communicate orally and written in a highly professional way, but who are also willing to take the reins, identify a problem, and then go out and figure out that solution. And so thinking about that and how to frame yourself as that, I think is incredibly important. The other in demand, and I mentioned this before, so I won't go too much into it, is the project and product management. We have more requests for this, and it's really interesting too. A lot of organizations are figuring out how to scale their learning, design, and development because it's an arduous process. Things are constantly changing. Curriculum needs to be updated. User feedback is acquired, and so there's a never-ending list of tasks to do. And so what they're finding is that if you bring on someone who has curriculum design and development, teaching and learning experience, that they can be exceptional project managers, and they're able to scale operations in a way that hasn't been done before. So these project managers are often overseeing entire teams of instructional designers and graphic designers and video producers and writers and so forth, and putting together the budget and putting together the project plan. If you're interested in this kind of area, I would suggest pursuing your PMP and even your MBA. Business acumen on top of the skills that you already know and are learning now is a game changer in terms of hireability. Organizations love to see that you understand the organization's mission and needs, and so these are great skills to have. And then we already talked about learning analytics as well, but this is again an area where that's growing, and there's definitely higher salaries in these two areas.
Actually, we have two questions. The first one is from Denise. What type of training or classes should non-teachers take to break into this field? I am a project manager looking to make a career industry change. And then after that, somebody answered already for what is PMP. And so we only have one question. What type of training classes should non-teachers take to break into this field?
Yeah, so non-teachers, I'm excited firstly that a project manager is breaking in. Those skills are incredibly important. So I think the master's in education, so getting a really solid foundation in teaching and learning theory and best practices is incredibly important. So understanding that design and development process, the ADDIE model of how do we go through that is important. And then a baseline of e-learning technology is also critical because you're going to be working with all of those professionals. And so being aware of the tools and general limitations and so forth is helpful.
I didn't pay Ashley to, provide a commercial for our program, but whatever she just said is part of our program coursework. So if you have questions about the programs, Ailey is monitor the chat right now. Ailey is our program manager. Feel free to ask Ailey about the program requirement or program coursework, okay?
Yeah. And in terms of the questions for the PMP, the PMP is just it's a project management professional certificate. And just to be clear on this one, it's not critical that you're PMP certified. What is critical is that you have the underlying skills and knowledge and technological use and that you're able to demonstrate that. And so taking project management courses is incredibly helpful for that. To take the PMP, you have to have a certain number of professional hours and then you can sit for the exam. It's a long process, and this has never been a game changer in whether someone gets a job or doesn't at this point in time. And so, but it's really about demonstration of those skills and understanding. Okay, a couple of other things to think about in terms of your career and where you're headed. There's if you're thinking about management and leadership. These are two very different areas. So management is all about operations and operational knowledge. So it's about improving the efficiency of operations and ensuring the quality of products and learning and so forth. And so again, this is a great path for people who are a little bit more project management focused, a little bit more detail oriented and organization focused. And then the other area is leadership. And leadership it's all about vision and people. And I think the good thing is that you can practice either of these without technically being in a management position or in a leadership position. But we need more people who have a vision of where is education going, who are looking across the field and pulling different ideas together. Leaders are the ones who are painting this picture, and then they're motivating others through various means to follow them. So leaders aren't the people who are giving directions and saying you need to do it this way. They're painting the picture and then enabling those with skills to figure out how to get there. I think that that if you're striving to be a manager or to be a leader, you should start thinking about these skills and practicing them now, and thinking about how do you lead via influence, because it's so very different than a manager. Okay, the other area is building your brand. It is essential for everyone to have an online presence. The first thing that we do as a staffing agency when we receive someone's resume is look them up on LinkedIn. And so if you don't have a LinkedIn profile, you should go and get it set up. Here is a profile for Melissa Milloway, and she was just named LinkedIn's top influencer. And so she has a background very similar to all of us. teaching, instructional design. And what sets her apart is that she's created this great story of who she is. She's framed it concisely and clearly, and she's worked diligently to grow her network. So just click connect and start connecting with other professionals in your field. Even if you don't know them, most of them will accept because they're also growing their network. And then make sure that you're engaging, and you can engage in a couple of ways. You can provide updates or curate content and share that out. But the more that you do on LinkedIn, the bigger presence you're going to have, and the more opportunities you'll have. Okay, so the other couple of things to be thinking about are maximizing, some of your materials.
Yeah. We have a question from Matthew. It's a little bit long. I have 8 years of curriculum design and teaching online, but it was all at a career school, not a college or university. I have since completed my bachelor's degree and working on my master's. When I was looking for a position, I could not get anyone to take my credentials seriously because it was not a university. 7 different schools would not even discuss adjunct position because of this. How do I get them past this obstacle? I have taught medical terminology, anatomy, medical ethics, career development, customer relation, medical billing, and coding courses for ICD-9 and ICD-10 coding, all of which in the classroom then develop our online program and taught all of this online. Not one nibble or even a conversation to allow me to show what I'm versed in this field. So your thoughts, how do I get them past this obstacle?
Well, I think Dr. Chen, I'd love to have your take on this one as well, because for certain organizations there's table stakes, and what that means is that to even be considered you have to have the proper credentials. And so it's wonderful that you are moving in that direction, and I would advise you to look at other types of entities that don't have the same requirements. Universities require a master's degree for teaching at a minimum, and they have a certain quota. And so they have to have, I believe at one school it was 10% were allowed to have master's degrees. The rest of the 90% had to have a terminal degree. So there's these strict requirements that they have, and it's the same for instructional design or learning design employment within university settings. It's not the same on the corporate side, and it's not the same when you're contracting. So if you're a contractor, there's ways to work with universities, but if they're going to hire you as an employee, you often have to have those credentials. Dr. Chen, what's been your experience?
So actually, we have another expert on the call. Actually, is one of our instructor, but I'm just going to try because sometimes for the university higher education is, or even the K-12, is based on accreditation, right? Some of those are accreditation requirements. Like for example, a lot of people say, okay, if you're going to teach at the university level, you need to have 1 degree higher. So for example, you're teaching a bachelor's degree program, you need to have master degree. You're teaching a master degree, you need to have, EDS or doctorate. So 1 degree higher, or significant amount of the experience in the related field. So related field is really important. So that's really on the higher ed. However, just like Ashley mentioned about, it's also different in corporate or any project-based kind of positions. Sometimes they might, personally, I think it might be something just like Ashley says, you have a presence, you have demonstrated a project, or you have a wonderful story to tell. And I think that will make a difference. And Matthew also mentioned, I went to 3 different community college, only offer associate degree. It was offer complete my bachelor's degree. And so I was qualified but no nibbles, yes. And so really community college we consider is like bachelor's at the bachelor's level. So usually most of the faculty member instructors that are looking for are 1 degree higher, which is like the graduate degree.
Yeah.
Right, so for the graduate degree. And so again, I'm not sure about the individual situation, and I think that will be something um, maybe if you're in our program, we might be able to take a look at your Vita or give you some kind of advice, work with our career office and give you some kind of advice. And the reason I want to mention it, we have one of the audience, we have one people in the audience is Dr. McCarthy, and she is also going to be our instructor, hopefully. And she did a lot of the accreditation visit for every school. And then, so all I know about accreditation actually coming from her, actually. But anyway, that's our take as far as from my end. And then Ashley, I think you can probably hear a lot of different takes, a lot of different opinions. You just need to take it as the suggestion and then see what works the best. And then we can actually set up another appointment and work with you to review the Vita if necessary, or introduce you to our career services office. Okay, Ashley, back to you.
Great, thanks so much. So, and you know, we're going to get into some of those details too about how to optimize your resume and what to have. And I have that a little bit further down the list just because I want to show you some slides on that. But one of the things that you can start doing now is putting together samples of your work. That's always one of our requirements. We're looking for a few things. You know, so dependent on the job that you're applying for. So if it's a project management role, we're going to want to see, you know, a project schedule, a scoping document, you know, a budget, so related samples of work. We're also always looking for a document, so a written document that showcases your communication ability. And so we're looking for clear, concise, accessible communication that's actionable. And then the third part would be just, you know, industry knowledge. So if it's in the learning field, we want to see some sort of documentation that shows your pedagogical knowledge. And so we'll often look for, you know, lesson plans, design documents, things of that sort. So if you can start putting those things together, putting them aside, that's incredibly helpful to be able to shoot over right after or even before an interview. You don't need a fancy portfolio. There's lots of people who work incredibly hard on their portfolio websites. Those are great to have. And they showcase your skills in other arenas as well. But samples of work that you can send in document form are just as effective. So I did want to share a little bit about what is an ATS. Another acronym that you don't really need to know. But an ATS is an applicant tracking system. And the reason that I tell you about it is it's because what the staffing recruitment industry uses. And so it's our software and it's our system, and it collects all applicants, and then we're able to keyword search. And so there's a lot of automation involved with it. And so it's always pulling up the best matched applicants. And what we see, so oftentimes there's 250, 300 applicants for a single position. And it's impossible for someone to go through all of those, all of those resumes. So keep that in mind as we're talking about resume essentials, because there's a way to help boost yourself to the top. So we're going to go ahead and jump into resumes and talk a little bit first about what not to do. And so if anybody is familiar with search engine optimization, that's when, and keyword spamming, people used to on their websites, they used to just put in tons and tons of keywords so that they would get picked up on Google. And we see the same thing in resumes. People are putting in a lot of keywords, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's not really focused and tight. And so So too much information, too many keyword stuffing is not helpful. So when we see these kinds of resumes with just a ton of information, full sentences, it's not specific to the job, this isn't helpful in moving your resume to the top of the list. And non-accessible information. You don't know if the person that's going to be looking at your resume is an expert in that field or not. Oftentimes they're not. They're from the human resources department and they have some general knowledge. So just, make sure that you're closing those communication gaps for them. Okay, just a couple more don'ts. This resume is nicely formatted. It looks great, but it's missing links. It's great to have links to portfolios, to your samples of work. You can just put them in a Google Drive document so they're easy to access, and absolutely a link to your LinkedIn profile. The other thing it's missing is a targeted statement. So I don't want to say the cover letter is dead because some organizations require a cover letter. I would say the majority don't. And so now the new norm is creating this targeted purpose statement that showcases why you're a good match for a particular role. And so you want to be updating that resume and making sure that it matches what you're applying to. And then on this one, there's not a skills breakdown either. It's really interesting, I think, what's happening in education and in corporate environments across the field. Everyone is starting to break things down on the skill level. So they want to be able to quickly see what skills do you have, both technical and soft skills, and also, foundational skills in your area. So if it's instructional design or project management or analytics, what are those core skills you have? Okay, so here's a do. This particular one has, as soon as I opened it, I could tell that it was written for this job. I could tell that the person had made connections between, who they are and what the job responsibilities were, and they wrote a purpose statement that explained why they were a good match. They have links to their LinkedIn profile. They have their skills broken down on the right-hand side. And it's clean and clear and easy to read. Okay, this is another do. And this one, the design is even better. The font it's large, it's a little bit rounded, and so keep those universal design standards in mind when you're creating your resume. Times New Roman, it feels a little bit dated, and so you always want to consider what organization are you applying to. Is it a government entity? Is it a university? Is it an ed tech company? And that will change both your design and your tone that you use. So government entities, they want to see that you have all the acronyms and are speaking their language. Ed tech startups and service companies, they're all about quick, efficient, accessible language. And depending on the university, it may need to be a little bit more academic. And another level of professional communication. So be thoughtful about how you're communicating why you're a fit. Okay, so I hope that helps with your resume and thinking about how to build that out. A couple of other things. So I conduct interviews probably, gosh, I don't know, 30, 40 a week. And so it's really interesting to see, some of the common pitfalls, and also to start seeing this trend of who are the people that make a lasting impression. And so one thing to do is to make sure that you always do your homework. I can't tell you how many times I've started an interview and they're not sure what the position is that they're interviewing for or who the company is. And because of that, it doesn't matter what skills and what's on their resume. If they are not taking the time to do that, I have concerns about what type of employee they're going to be for my client. The other one is make sure that you're ready to make those connections. So look at that job description, help the interviewer understand how it relates to your past experience and what you can bring to the table to begin adding value immediately. So don't leave it to them to make the connections. Make sure that you're bringing up stories and examples and show what kind of experience and problem solving you have. The next one is to be professional and passionate. So it doesn't need to be boring. Your personality should absolutely come through. You should show that you're excited about the ideas and the work. But it's also really important to make sure that you're using cordial language, that you're taking the time to learn who your interviewer is and asking key questions. And so all of those things show that you're reflective and that you're thoughtful, and they show what kind of employee you're going to be. The last one is build relationships. I've met so many people who are disappointed if the job is not a great fit, or if it just doesn't seem like it's going well. It doesn't matter. If that interview doesn't go well and you make a great impression and build a relationship, they're going to pick up the phone and call you when the right opportunity does come up. There's been a lot of organizations that I've referred people to because they were great, and sometimes they don't make it, but that organization remembers that person, and they keep a pin in their mind of, as soon as I have something that works for them, I'm going to pick up the phone and call. So just make sure you're getting to know them, that you're building relationships, that you're not closing doors. Okay, I love this one, particularly for all of the women out there and anyone else who has been hesitant to negotiate. This is incredibly important. If you've gotten past all of these hurdles, so finding the job, submitting your resume, the materials, going on all the interviews, they've also gone through that entire process and are tired and like you and want to bring you on. And so it's always important to say, yes, I'm so excited about this position, but I was really hoping to be here instead. Is that possible? So there's a very polite way to negotiate, and I think the best way that I've always seen it done is with a yes, but. And what this does is it immediately brings up your value in the eyes of the employer. So they see that you value your time and your career, and in turn, that makes them value you all the much more. And so don't be afraid to negotiate. They've invested a lot of time in making sure that they found the right candidate, and so just opening that door to what if can be really helpful, and it makes a long-term impact on your overall earnings. Okay, so now you're in the job, and I want you to think back to digitization and what's happening, because there is going to continue to be a lot of change, and we're all going to need to be incredibly adaptive. And so within universities, within corporate learning and development departments, there's restructurings, there's layoffs, there's evolving roles, there's doing more with less. And so it's important for us to keep this in mind, because there's always going to be challenges, but you're going to get through those challenges by saying yes and by building a safety net. And so what I mean by that is, when you're in a role, is being responsive to the organization's needs. So understand your organization, where they're going, what their goals are, and making sure that your work is lining up with that. It's about being uncomfortable, putting yourself out there, continuing to learn other skills, going back to school like many of you are, upskilling in other small ways. And so if you can continue to move with the movement of your organization or the field, you're going to be better positioned. The people that I've seen have a more difficult time are those that get complacent and they're not continuing to move and to grow. And so the other part, as we mentioned before, is the safety net. Your network is incredibly important. So building it sounds like there is an amazing program at Cal State where you can build, a strong support system, but building your network on LinkedIn, attending events, being an influencer or curator. So I think there's been in the past 5-10 years, the influencers have made a big impact on our lives, but now we're moving on to this curation phase. And so people who can identify, important ideas and important issues and are sharing those out with their network, those are going to be the next influencers. So don't worry if you're not a blogging pro, or if you don't have, 100 ideas to share out. Just start sharing interesting things that are helpful to your network, and that will help you build your brand and your relationships. Okay, so just a couple of final thoughts. I think at the end of the day, you're here for a reason. You're passionate, you're driven. You wouldn't be in the master's program, you wouldn't be in education and learning if there wasn't something about it that drives you. So keep a hold of that purpose and let that take you to where you're going next. You really do have it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Thank you, Ashley.
Sure.
Even myself, I learned a few things from your talk, and I really appreciate it. And now I have to thinking about going back to my LinkedIn profile and do some update for my LinkedIn profile. Not that I'm looking for a job, but still constantly monitor and then updating your LinkedIn profile. That's a wonderful thing. And then I want to piggyback to what Ashley says about the digitization 25 years, and thinking about all those 25 years and then 24%, right? And then, but today they're also talking about 60 years curriculum. So if you do the 1+1+1, then really the careers, the opportunities out there. And I just thinking that is everybody really need to take the opportunity whenever you have. Like we're trying to have this kind of guest speaker to offer the insight to our students, but anytime you have opportunity to even participate any kind of projects or any kind of doesn't matter how small it is, we encourage all of our students to take the opportunity and participate. So just our student participating the artificial intelligence projects, some of them doing the adaptive learning. So are there any questions, the last minute questions that you have for Ashley? We have about 5 minutes left. So we do have one. Can you expand on what a curator actually does?
Oh, sure. So a curator is someone who is reading and sharing others' ideas. And so if you find an interesting blog that's helpful to teachers within your network, sharing that out. So being a source of information and insight for others that you didn't necessarily create, but that you're sharing in context is so helpful to other people. And I'm really seeing this as the new way to influence and a much more efficient way to be top of mind and to be helpful to people within your network. Thank you. And a lot of the thank you notes to you, by the way, in the chat. So make sure that you read it. And then we also have a question about, for each one of the industry that you mentioned about, such as the K-12 higher ed, ed tech, private, government, those 4 areas. Did you see any differences on what their need, what type of the person they are looking for in recent years? Just wondering. Yeah, I think so within education, I'm seeing there's greater specialization happening there. So whether you're focused on pedagogy or technology or design, in corporate learning and development, across all of, the various industries, there's not as much specialization. Instructional designers are still graphic designers and multimedia developers and technologists and so forth. There's some evolution of it, but it's not as strong.
Okay, and then we have a question from in the chat. Can an MA in education allow you to be an online counselor or be able to teach education courses in college online? I want to research more the job positions. Just for the second part of your question, be able to teach the education courses in the college online, I would actually answer the first one. Can the MA allow you to be an online counselor? So the second part of your question, teaching education courses, it depends. Again, if you're teaching undergraduate degree, of course, you need to have a master's degree. You're teaching a master's degree, you need to have one degree higher, but also what is the subject areas that you are concentrated. So for example, if you're MA in, let's say, in curriculum instruction, then maybe it will allow you to teach the course that is curriculum instruction. But if just MA in education in general, it might be a little bit tough to teach the education courses. But if you have extensive experience, then based on your experience, let's say either teaching experience, then it might allow you to tap into the teaching specific, like teaching a subject area of courses. And actually the first part is, can MA in education allow you to be an online counselor?
An online counselor, and I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what's meant by that. And does that mean like therapy, or does that mean counseling students in terms of academic programs and support?
Or maybe just in general, can the MA in education allow you to be an online counselor or be able to teach education courses in college online in general?
Right.
From your standpoint, I'm waiting to see if she has any updates.
Sure. It can, but it's more difficult to find those positions without a terminal degree. There's a lot of competition, is what I found in the in online teaching space, and so again, it's important to build those relationships. Start small, pick up a course or two courses where you can, and show that that you're a great teacher, facilitator, faculty member, and continue to grow from there.
So there's an update: counseling students, parents, and administering teachers online.
Absolutely. So that that counseling and advising. So I'm seeing a lot of that in K-12 online education. They often have counselors that are assigned to students and to parents, and then there's also tutoring services where that may also be applicable. And so those may be a couple of areas to look, would be at the company K-12 or various online tutoring.
Awesome. So it's 2 minutes past 1. I just want to plug in for our next eLearning Insight series for the spring. It will be probably sometime in April and May. And I just got a confirmation today from another speaker who is actually a startup CEO for adaptive learning company. And so I just want to put it out there. So look for the information that we're going to push out. And so another question, what about academic advisor position at the college level? I think Ashley will agree is, yeah, MA in education probably is helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So any last minute thoughts, suggestions for our students, a prospective student or alum before we call it a day?
Yeah, again, I think just be be purposeful about your path. Think about what interests you, where your passions lie, and then be very clear about communicating that with others and finding organizations that you're a good fit for. There's a lot of organizations out there that are hiring in a lot of different areas, so it's wide open, and we're all here at this critical time and can make a great impact in terms of where education and learning is headed.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you so much for your time. I cannot say enough of thank yous to you. Anybody, if you have any question at all for Ashley, you can search her LinkedIn profile, and you can also contact us, contact Adi if you have any questions. So thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing everybody during our next one. Okay.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Ashley. Thank you. Bye-bye.